very rare breed, rare dying breed. And I'm honored to have known him. And he has inspired me, and I will never forget him. And he will continue to inspire me throughout the rest of my life. And the way that I choose to wear his grave is with one right here. And thank you guys for letting me speak. I'm probably going to leave, so don't call. He was a great man, and I'm so glad I got to work with him and all the stories he told. And I think I would trade any of it for the world. Not at all. Thank you guys. Thank you.
A friend who couldn't be here tonight wrote a post on his blog. I think most of you know Rich McKenzie, that student. I mentioned him during my introduction speech. He wrote a post, and I'm actually going to spend a lot of time up here, so if anybody wants to pay me off or whatever, do it now so the video on. And like I said, Rich wrote this. He wanted me to read it. And those of you with sensitive constitutions or aversions to nasty swear words, Grandma, might want to read it now. Yeah. Tune out. Think about All right. And I hope he's watching because I'm looking right at him right now. It's going to be forever to find this thing, so you better be freaking great. Dear Dad, first off, this is bullshit. I'm in Alaska and having PK read this. Oh, thanks. But this is your memorial, so let's talk about what I remember. Yes, and then we'll talk later. I remember thinking you were one of the biggest assholes I'd ever met when we first met. I remember something telling me that you had answers, and that being the reason I didn't try to kick your ass. I remember following your instructions to the letter just to prove that you were full of shit. And I remember my first lesson in humility when it worked and you were right. You had no reason to give a shit. You didn't owe me anything. Yet you took me in and put up with my ego and showed me more love and patience than anyone has ever showed me. I wasn't blood, but you showed me unconditional love, and I never took that for granted. I remember you never tried to bullshit me. No dogma, no flair, just simple from the gut truth, even if it was ugly at times. You always shot from the hip, but it came from the heart. I remember the last time I stayed with you, getting tickets to see George Thorogood at the Walton Arts Center. Nosebleed seats, but damn, we've never held a night. I thought I knew you, but after seeing the outpour of love the past week, it's clear that you were far more humble than I understood. That I was not the only life you saved. I made my peace with you. Nothing was left unsaid. All we can do now is honor your spirit. I raise a heavy glass to you, my father, my teacher, my dearest friend. Then jitsu cowboy son of a bitch. That was Rich McKenzie. Very well put. Nothing I would have said in front of Nick's company, but he begged me to read it. So I've got my own little anecdote. And technically Dad's not the star of this story, but a supporting character. But it's definitely proof of his influence and the kind of guts and morale and just brassness, I suppose I'd call it, that he either, if you want to be generous, taught us, if you want to be honest, infected us with. And this is a story of the game I mentioned. He introduced us to the game Arkham Horror around Christmas 2009. He was working at the KNWA, the TV station, where he played it with a friend of his, Thomas. I don't know if he's here now. But within a month of having played that game for my birthday, he immediately bought me the core game for this game, Arkham Horror, and the expansions, like 3 out of about 8 months. And it took us a little while to get used to the rules, but when we did, this happened. Our story begins in Arkham, Massachusetts, where things are going to be absolute crap. There are deep ones, which are half-fish hybrids from Nightmare City wandering around. There are Migos flitting through the sky kidnapping people like the horrible bug things that they are. And there are great worm creatures called doles causing earthquakes and making everybody unhappy. I have taken on the role of the admirable Dexter Drake magician. My sister had taken on the role of I believe her name is Sarah Grace, the student, and Dad had taken on his prototypical character, which was, shocking to no one, Michael McGlenn, the gangster. This game is set in the 1930s, so when we say gangster, we do not mean 50 Cent, we mean Elliot Ness. Well, fit in just fine. Well, our enemy at that time, the reason for all these otherworldly incursions and traveling back and forth and was a friendly little feller named Hastur the Unspeakable, a.k.a. the King in Yellow. And the King in Yellow is a race of creatures known as the Great Old Ones, who are older than human history and 40 times as scary. Well, we fiddle-farted around a little too long, and Hastur the Unspeakable woke up and showed up in the sleepy little town of Arkham, Massachusetts, right there staring us in the face. Dexter Drake, Michael McGlenn, and Sarah Grace all fought valiantly, and Michael McGlenn and Dexter Drake died screaming. Unfortunately for them. That left all the weapons in our possession, all the spells in our possession, everything that gave us an edge on Hastur the Unspeakable, gone in the mist, smashed with the 2 heroes that had gone with them. Sarah Grace, meanwhile, had been slowly losing health and sanity fighting this thing, and had no weapons whatsoever, just her plain regular fight stat, which was just kind of assumed to be how hard you could punch, which for most people wasn't as hard as say machine. So, there is Sarah Grace with nothing but her fists. There is Hastur the Unspeakable with precious little health left. And there is Gaia rolling the dice and getting exactly enough successes to remove that last piece of health. So, only by having someone like Kirby as a father can you muster up the guts to punch an elder god older than humanity in the face and kill him as a result. So, that's been by far my most memorable story for Arkham Horror, which was his favorite board game. And it was definitely Gaia's moment to shine, and I think indicative of just the kind of, let's call it temerity, that he instilled in everyone, from his kids to his students to, I should hope, even some of his friends. Thank you.
Now, many of you in the room from the days of the covering course with Kirby, Michelle, and Rhonda, Tracy, Neal, Ben Pollock working at the paper, Steve. Kirby is to this day the only person I know who is a Zen Buddhist monk, a collector of antique firearms such as Kalashnikovs and, AK-47s, and also was as outgoing and warm, while as hard-headed and stubborn as he was. And this could be summed up by one thing. Kirby said all these hippie people and being open is all well and good, but if you're going to dance in the valley wearing your flower crown, someone's got to be on the mountaintop standing guard as the sniper to keep them safe. At times, Kirby was the hippie dancing in the valley.
being in, and what we shall see, what will be, we will be. Other times, he was, most times figuratively, on the mountaintop being a sniper, taking pot shots at those who deserve it, afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted. Those of you who may not know, talked to Robbie on the way down here. She said the church is on fire. They think it's only smoke, we're not sure. Kirby's the type of guy that's dying at home in the middle of the night with his family around him while peaceful and comforting, and a testament to Robbie's and his children's love and friendship for him. Not nearly dramatic enough for Kirby. I don't think this was an electrical ballast or whatever. I think this was just Kirby going, I'm gonna get you! One last shot at you. When we were working at the paper, there was a story he covered in the Bentonville office where there was a hearse at one of the funeral homes in Bentonville. Somebody broke into the funeral home, stole some money and some sound equipment and what have you, and made off with the hearse with the deceased lady in the back. They looked for the hearse, the Bentonville police, the sheriff's office, they had ATVs. Looked for that hearse for, 2 or 3 days over the weekend. Thought it was kind of a funny story, yet touching as well. Interviewed the lady's family and, helped make what could have been a very heinous crime into kind of, a memorable event. And Kirby and I laughed and talked about how that's the way to go out. Don't just have one funeral or peaceful, make it dramatic. So I know he's up there going, see, told you, told you. Kirby and I also have our moments. I remember one time Kirby had come to the paper after I had taken off work to have my daughter. I covered courts before Kirby arrived. I came back to the paper in around 2000 and was ready to cover courts again. Kirby greeted me with, hey kid, I cover the courts beat. What can I teach you? I said, hey old man, I cover courts in Dade County before you even got here. Let's sit down, let's see what you can learn from me. Fortunately, our relationship went uphill from there, and for the next decade, we collaborated on many stories, and we would conspire with our competitors, Tracy, to sit in the courthouse lobby together on a slow day, look at our watches, and tap our feet, anxiously around the corner, act like we were waiting big news to break, just to get under Tracy's skin and make him think we had something that he didn't have. Kirby wanted to get home to his kids when it was his weekend. We also had what we called the Friday agreement. 429, some lawyer comes rushing in with a newsworthy lawsuit or filing those criminal charges we've been waiting on for 2 weeks. Got kids this weekend. Tracy, did you miss that? Did you see that? No, I'm going home to Louisiana. I didn't see nothing. Found out a couple of years later that Debbie Miller, mine and Kirby's editor in the Bentonville office, was totally onto us, that Debbie herself had a life outside of work and understood as a dad where it's his weekend with his kids and not wanting to miss it, having his head on straight enough to know when something could wait because his children could not. I never saw Kirby drunk. I never saw him on substances, but he's made no bones that him and substances have not gotten along well in the past, or perhaps got along a little too well at times. That is you too. He kicked it all to the curb. Robbie, you obviously know this as well, being as close to him as you were. He was the type of guy who reminded me of the character in Eat, Pray, Love, where Julia Roberts, this is a section where the lady in the book, I forget her name, but Julia Roberts, Elizabeth Gilbert, was at the temple in India and ran into a gentleman who, like Kirby, was a little rough around the edges, outspoken, had a past with substances. And Elizabeth asked that gentleman, I'm writing a book about my travels, do you mind if I mention you? He said, no, I've been kind of trying to get the word out about my past struggles and my addictions anyhow. And that reminded me a lot of Kirby. He never turned away from who he had been. but he cared enough about people and things around him to advance beyond who he had been and become more. So even though he may be on a different plane now, Kirby is something more. I'm privileged to have known him for well over a decade, and I'm going to miss him dearly.
I don't have the anecdotes that Lana's going to have, just because I've been thinking for a week, if not longer, about things to say about Kirby, and to boil it down to one perfect one like Lana did, like Tristan's son, the priest. It's for others to do. I just want to say, listening to everybody, I thought of basically the proverbial candle burning at both ends, and I wished Kirby's had been not a little longer, but a full taper, just a lot longer, a pillar and a taper. But there was a lot of onion about them, and I've changed that. I've been mixed metaphors wildly. Artichoke. You keep taking one leaf and you find other leaves. I met him about the same time as Lana in 1999, very early. I was in the Springdale office as an editor, Kirby living here, worked in Bentonville Rogers, covering county courts. And I knew him mostly at that point as a disembodied voice. I worked late, so when he had a late story or the court met late, then I would edit the story rather than his own editor. And so, of course, we had talks before and after as I was going over the story. That's where I first began to know him and to treasure him. And I learned a lot about him. I don't think I shared as much about him. And it wasn't that Kirby was the man who grabbed the mic. He didn't, but my gosh, it was interesting. And after he left the morning news, he became a camera operator. And he had a good life at that. But it's a lot different being a camera operator. And as I recall him telling me, it was early morning. He did the Today Show, or the equivalent of the Today Show. Just got off for hours. But they would do music production and other electronic audio work afterwards, and made a living at it. I didn't know that. And I didn't know anything about his belief system. I knew precious little about his family. I knew he had one. And then somewhere on the square, there he was in his priestly garb. And since I'd been with my wife following the Geshe Dorje's son, it's like I knew what it was. I had no idea that he follows him. And I never thought to tell him that I'd been studying Jewish Kabbalah, mysticism, or Vedic tradition since I was a child. I don't think he ever knew that about me, but I kept finding places of kinship. I think most of you found these places of kinship. And everything I found kept going. I'm in the Ozark Poets and Writers Collective. He came every few months and read one of his own. The Butterfield Trail book, the Ambrose Bierce, pretty much a literary biography of Ambrose Bierce, but it's also put on tape. All these layers, or all these leaves. Someone talked about the candle better than me, and that's what I wanted to know, and that's a little bit particular anecdote. And the St. Vincent Millay, it rhymes, it's in meter, that's not always the thing, but in 1918 it was quite the thing to still be doing. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But all my foes and oh my friends, it gives a lovely light.
so easy for me because he was always in trouble. My mom and dad were so busy watching him dart around in one corner and another that they just really didn't notice some of the things that I did. And my younger sister really kind of was annoyed with me because she's like, oh, she's not so perfect. But you know, it wasn't so perfect. I just had my big brother distracting everybody. And to Kirby, I don't want you to think that he didn't appreciate me for what I am, but he thought I was pretty white bread. You know, I'm just kind of a regular kid. To have a brother like Kirby, I was 2 years behind him in school, and teachers would be calling roll when we were so different. They'd be like, well, you're not Kirby Sanders' sister, are you? And I'd say, well, yes. And I'm like, oh my God. But again, he cleared the way for me because all I had to do was be semi-decent and not argue with them all. They thought, you know, that I was pretty great. My brother was protective of me and my sister in his own way. He didn't ever have to fight anybody or anything very open. But if he thought I was getting too friendly with people that were not the right crowd, or if some of his friends maybe started to go, oh, that's kind of cute. He was not going to have that. He didn't want me to be affected or influenced by people that he thought would send the wrong messages to me. And I was a senior in high school. I graduated in 1973, and he had heard through the grapevine that one of my girlfriends was we were gonna smoke marijuana. And he called me aside. I don't know how he learned this. He called me aside and made it perfectly clear that that kind of behavior was not to be tolerated by anybody but him. We did a lot of things together that were just simple things. Mom and Dad would watch, you know, who was on Sunday? The Ed Sullivan Show and things like that. And we would get up and dance together. I learned how to dance, a lot of that with my brother. And I guess in about junior high school, we took ballroom dance lessons, and were on a show in Houston called the Larry King Show, kind of like American Bandstand, only local. And I remember, God knows we wouldn't dance together on TV, but we practiced a lot together, and we did all right. We didn't really get in much trouble together, although there was one event that we kept secret for decades. You didn't tell your little sister anything, because she would tell. So Mom and Dad were getting ready to go out. They were going to a jazz club, and Kirby was going to stay home and watch over the household, make sure everything, you know, Barbie and I were safe. And but we decided we wanted to go pick up a couple of our friends and go stop Dairy Queen. And we got permission to go, and Mom said, yes, you know, you go straight over to Dairy Queen, you get your stuff, and you come straight back. Well, Kirby was driving. So we didn't do either of those things. And we had an Oldsmobile 88 that had pointy front end, and then it curved out at a big boat-like front end. Thank you. And the bumpers had two big points on both sides, and it was yellow, and it was a beautiful car. It was pretty new. And we got in it, and we started driving out right past the Dairy Queen. We did stop to pick up my girlfriend Carol, and we were driving down this little rattle road, which was not used anymore, but it was twilight, and all of a sudden I said, "Is there something in the BAM?" And we hit this thing in the road, and he put on the brakes, and rubber was flying everywhere, and we were fishtailing, and we came, as we were coming to a slowdown, this animal came rolling up over that boat car. 4 legs aside, 4 legs up, 4 legs on, and things kept rolling, right up to the windshield and stopped. All 4 legs straight up, and Kirby looked at us, cow. Black cow. And Kirby said, "Oh," what would Kirby say? And the cow just rolled off the front of the car and ran off. So we looked at each other, and it was getting dark, and we looked at our friends, and we were like, "Oh no." So we got out of the car, and we went and we looked at the points, and they looked all right to us, dark. And then we drove to the 7-Eleven, and there was kind of in it, but we popped the hood and tried to push it out a little bit. We got home, and we parked the car at the curb instead of putting it in the garage or in the driveway, because Mom and Dad were going out. We didn't want them to do damage. Well, they didn't. And the next morning, Mom comes into the kitchen, and she says to me, "You know, something strange happened when we were at that jazz club. We think somebody must have had a fight." And I was like, "Really? Well, why do you think that?" She said, "Well, there's this dent in the front of our car, and black hair all over the grill, and so we just think there must have been some kind of fight where someone threw a man against the car." And Kirby and I went, "That must be what happened." And on my parents' 60th anniversary, my daughter, who had heard the story, thought that it would be funny to bring it up. And she said, "Hey, why don't you tell that story about you and Kirby hitting the cow?" And my mother went, "What?" And my sister went, "What?" So anyway, having a brother like Kirby could be a lot of fun, and he was one of a kind, and I'll miss him. And when I'll have to show you. When I left the hotel tonight to come over here, my car was parked right outside the hotel, and just literally the width of the sidewalk from where I came out the door of the hotel to where I opened the door to my car, and this feather was laying right there. So he let me get. Oh, Bob. So there goes Mom. Thank you. You're welcome.